Hi, I'm Gemma. I'm the founder of Culture Gem and I'm a cyber behaviour and culture consultant. And joining me today is Jamie Cook. Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you. Sort of like welcome to you as well.
Well, it's lovely having you here. You're a face from the past. But before we get into that, can you give us a little intro into who you are and what you get up to?
Yes, so I'm a data engineer. Been working in this space for quite a few years now. Worked for quite a few different companies in quite a few different sectors, sort of like ranging from retail to banking to higher education. So yeah, I've sort of like covered quite a lot in the last sort of like I'm not going to say how many years, but quite a few years.
Yeah, just before we started recording, I was trying to think, as I just said, face from the past, but I was trying to think of our origin story. And I can't remember how many years ago it was, but a long, long time ago, you and I were thrown together
Yes.
in a transformation project
Yeah.
with a very, very short deadline.
Yes.
And it was horrendous. However, we made the most of it and then became friends.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we've not been in touch for quite a while because we've not
No.
managed to sync up.
Yeah, that's it. So it goes back to 2013, which is when I joined Swindon College when you were there. So I joined the MIS department. So I was just sort of like I joined, so I was just sort of like helping them with their data, with their reporting. And I think it was they was going through a new CRM tool, and that's how we got thrown together because you were
Mm.
working in marketing at that point, and so we got thrown together to sort of like say, right, okay, we need a new CRM system, and you've got no time to do it.
From memory, and I didn't realize, I knew it was a long time ago, but that's 10 years. So
10
you're
years.
probably my oldest professional friend now, in terms of like chronologically as opposed to elderliness. But yeah, 10 years ago, I think when I was brought into the project, I didn't realize that you were a newbie at the college at that time. And so that's news to me.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think they had a system for a while and not done anything with it, and then it was coming to the end of their service agreement, and so I think you and I had to learn everything and produce this system all at the same time.
Yes. Yeah. It was quite a stressful time actually, because I think it was that they had the Ofsted inspection, which we did get top marks for, so that was
Oh, you
good.
did, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, so it was a case of trying to understand exactly what they wanted and how we can do it, working in tight timescales with not much budget as well.
It was awful.
Yeah,
But I think if we hadn't have become friends in that moment, it probably would have been a lot worse. From memory, you were working in like a little glass fishbowl,
yeah,
and I would just come and hide with you, and we'd get loads done, and we had whiteboards so that we were like crossing off deliveries and stuff, and
yes,
sharing Confucius motivational
yeah,
thoughts as
They-
the days went on.
yeah, because still to this day, and I'm a massive advocate for whiteboards, and everyone I meet uh, actually as a leaving present from one company, they actually got me a little whiteboard because it was one of those that for me doing a whiteboard session is so important because it's far easier to sort of like write something on a whiteboard and rub it off rather than to try something and then get rid of the code. So for me, it was sort of like, it's such an important tool. And yeah, so in the early days, it was a case of, oh shit, we've got to do all this whiteboard session, see how we're going to do it. So yeah, it was interesting. I suppose looking back, I can laugh at it now, but I think it's the same with any project. When you're in it,
Mm.
it's not so much fun.
Mm. What was great, I think, about that highly stressful situation, and it wasn't fun at all, but now I look back again with fondness, is the connections that we made, and it could have been much worse.
Oh
So
yeah, definitely.
yeah, I mean, James Dow, who features in a lot of the stuff that I get up to, he was part of that project, and now he's
Yes.
doing interesting stuff as well. But yeah, I mean, you and I are friends in the real world, because we've
Yes.
met in person, but we're also Facebook friends as well.
Yeah.
So I follow your life, and I'm sure you follow mine, as things
Yes.
go on, which is very different from a lot of the conversations I've had throughout this series. So yeah, it's great to finally catch up.
Yeah, because it's sort of like since the college, I've had quite a few jobs. It's sort of like, because I think it's one of those that I sort of like, I join a company, I do as much as I can, and then I don't want to say I get bored, but I get to the point where I feel like I can't do no more. And no matter what you do, no matter what sort of things you put forward, they don't seem to take it on board. And so then I go to another company. Hence why, since I left Motorola in 2008, I've had quite a few jobs. If you look at my CV, it looks like a contractor CV, even though I'm not a contractor.
Mm. Absolutely. I always joke that I'm unemployable, and I think when I had a real job, I was really difficult to manage, because I find that as well. But in the world that I've kind of carved out for myself, I have the luxury, like you, of to say I'm not doing this. If you're not going to listen to my advice, then I'll
Yes.
go to someone that will listen.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, because it's one of those, because it's so easy to just sort of like just do stuff because people tell you to do it, even if you don't think it's right. And so I think it's really good that yourself, myself, we can turn around and we can say, no, we don't agree with that because it's the wrong thing to do. And
Mm.
it is quite often company cultures are such that this is the way we've always done it, which is the worst statement in the entire world. And that's when I sort of like think, right, okay, well, if I'm not going to make an impact, if I'm not going to be able to change anything, then I'm not going to waste my time.
Mm. I, as you were talking then, about the way we've always done stuff, a thought popped into my head of, well, I don't know whether we're allowed to be friends, because you're in data and I'm in cyber. Are we allowed to be friends?
Some of I've got I've got a friend. He works for one of the big organisations, and he's in sort of like cybersecurity. I always It's one of those. It's one of those interesting things. There is that sort of like, people that work in there shouldn't be friends with people that work in there. I always find, being a data person, the best people to make friends with are data governance, data security, and cyber security. Because no matter what I want to do, I can't do anything if I haven't got to sign off to do stuff. And by making friends with those types of people, you understand what needs to be done before I try and do anything. So I actually go out of my way to try and be friends with people like yourself, because I can't succeed without the say-so of people like yourself.
I love that. I'm all in that camp as well.
Yeah,
I think, from my experiences of working in cyber, um, it I don't want to say it's easy, because I absolutely don't find this easy, but I think it's typical for cyber people to only call on people when they need help, and
yeah,
not build those relationships. But like you said, those relationships are absolutely critical to being able to deliver anything. So in cyber, I make friends with everybody, like the
yeah.
facilities
See,
team. And actually, even in marketing, I used to do that as well. I used to go and hang
yeah,
out with facilities, because I'm going to need these people. And I
yeah.
also know what the truth of the situation is within an organization if I've got like a broad range of really strong relationships.
I think that's I struggle with people that don't have that concept, because for me it's I can't succeed on my own. I could be the best data engineer in the world, but I can't succeed on my own. I need other people to help. And if you don't build those relationships, people aren't going to help you. If you only call on people when you want them to do something, they stop responding because they know you want something. So there's a
Mm.
thin line between sort of like you know, always asking for something, but then being nice to people. So let's just go for a coffee. Let's just have a chat and do stuff like that. So they see you more than just, oh no, he's sending me an email. That means he wants something. And so I sort of like, I think it's important to build the personal relationships with people in the different parts of the organization, so that you can get stuff done quicker.
Mm. One of the first things I do when I work with a new client is I go to the IT team, and I just go and hang out with them, and I make
Yeah,
friends with them. And I will, every time I'm on site with a client, like I'll go and hang out with my friends in IT, because I absolutely need them. Um,
yeah.
Yeah, and you think in the world of cyber, how many exceptions you're expecting them to make away from like policy.
Yes.
And yeah, being a bull in a china shop is not the right way to do anything.
No, no, and a lot of it is sort of like, I don't profess to know everything there is to know about everything. So I know a lot about data because I'm a data engineer, but on other sides, like cybersecurity and all stuff like that, my knowledge isn't as great. So I rely on the people that need it. So by me having an appreciation for what other people do, it also means that if I want to do something, I know that I got to give people time for them to say yes or no. I can't just go up to them and say, I want to do this. Can I do it? I want the answer now. And so again, it's building, for me, it's building those relationships, not just to sort of like to help me, but also to try and get an understanding of what they do, because that's going to help me, because then I'm going to know, right, I want to do this. My deadline is this, right? So if I got 4 months to do this, I've got to start speaking to these people so that they could do their bits first. And it's sort of, I'm very much a face-to-face person. Homeworking for me isn't great because I'm a people person. So going into the office now, which I do a couple of days a week, is great because I get to speak to people and I get to carry on building those relationships, which helps me on a day-to-day basis.
How did you manage the last 3 years or so then with not having those face to face?
I struggled, if I'm brutally honest. I think it's one of those that, and it's having like Teams chats and stuff like that is, uh, a lot of the time people don't put their cameras on. So, and I just find talking to a screen, which essentially you are when you're doing these Teams meetings. I know we're doing this now, but there's a purpose because we're recording it, so that's fine. For me, I struggled because when I'm speaking to people, I see how they're listening. I look at the body language. So if I'm boring people, there's little telltale signs. So I know I've got to change how I'm delivering whatever I'm talking about. Otherwise, I'm going to start losing people. So for me, it was always a struggle the last 3 years. So when they said, we want you to go back into the office, for me that was yay! I get to go back into the office a couple of days a week. I can walk to work, so I've not got the same trouble as some people. So for me, it's okay.
I absolutely, in the opposite senses, I absolutely loved lockdown and was hoping that it would never end,
Yeah.
because it gave me a justifiable excuse to not have to go and do things.
Yeah.
I spend all of my day talking to people, but what I find really interesting is the needs that people have. So you need to be physically able to see all of those like little nuances in how someone behaves to be able to adjust, I guess, adapt to the whole situation.
Yeah.
Whereas I can't stand other people breathing near me. So absolutely the opposite to you.
Yeah, because I was going to say, how did you find it then? But yeah, so it was good for you.
Love
But
it.
yeah. But I must admit, I am on my own. I get bored of my own company, and I sort of like, I do have a habit of when I'm doing stuff. I do this in the office as well, so I slightly annoy people. Uh, when I'm thinking things through in my head, occasionally I will say them out loud, not loud, but loud enough so that people can hear you. And if he's talking to himself, I don't mean to do it. But for me, it's one of those. I think in lockdown that affected me more because it was a case of I need distractions of other people for me to be the best version of myself. And it's one of those, as I'm working, if I'm working on a problem, occasionally I'll sort of like, if I'm wearing headphones, I'll take my headphones off, and then if I'm in the office, I can listen to what other people are talking about. So then I get to see the big picture, because I found that again in lockdown, I'd be so focused on what I'm doing, I sometimes lost sight of the bigger picture because there was only me in a room as opposed to being in the office with other people.
Yeah. I was actually having a conversation, I think it was in the last episode of this, around a concept called rubber duck debugging, and talking through things, and it enabling you to change your brain processes or slow down your thinking to try and solve the problem. And so with the whiteboard thing that you mentioned, I absolutely do that as well. I have not that anyone can see, but I have a whiteboard here, which is my ideas whiteboard, and this is my doing whiteboard is over here. So I am surrounded by whiteboards. I love a whiteboard because it allows me to plot out that brain process and slow it down enough to make it I guess, a tangible list of things that I need to achieve, but also talking through, whether you're talking to someone or just talking out loud. Because I am like a lone wolf in the world, I quite often am having conversations with myself. I have arguments with myself, and as I'm walking around the house, I'll be doing things, and then I'll have a little debate with myself, and then I have a conversation with myself about why I'm talking to myself. Really strange, but it does allow me to process everything that's going on in the firing of my busy, crazy, chaotic brain.
Yeah, because I find it's sort of like that I go through notebooks like there's no tomorrow, but I never, very rarely will I go back and look at one of my old notebooks. For me, it's sort of like I find if I'm going through a problem, I'll draw a picture of the problem, and then I might look at it, and then I'll talk about that problem, even if it's just me. And I find the drawing of the problem, the talking of the problem, helps me process it more. So in a similar way, like when I'm in work and I do a whiteboard session with some other people, where we're write it, and for me, it's multiple. It's the multiple steps that I go through that help me. It sticks with me. Then that way, when I'm thinking about a problem we may have had a couple of months ago, I sort of like think, well, okay, I drew this, didn't I? Oh yeah, I can remember drawing that, and then it helps me. So yeah, it's very similar to yourself in that respect.
I think writing things out, like for me, it creates a lasting memory. But
Yes.
as soon as you started talking about drawing things out, my visualization came into my head, and I remember the whiteboard. Like that's buried deep in my head. But I remember the whiteboard in your fishbowl, and you had like buckets of things and connections to it all. And that wasn't how my brain works, but I could absolutely go along the journey with you. And we used to get together a couple of times a day and plot things out. So, I find how people's brains work really interesting, which I guess is why I do what I do. Yeah. So the theme of this series is Cyber Awareness Month, and I guess from the day job, you have been in receipt of some kind of enforced cyber stuff. What's your thoughts, feelings, fears around cyber awareness?
My thoughts and fears is that there isn't enough of it. I think it's the online world. I transcend sort of like multiple generations. So I can remember a time when like computers weren't even of day-to-day use. I can remember when mobile phones weren't a day-to-day use. I can remember not having a mobile phone. And so for me, it's just sort of like I see now people rely on them so much, but I'm not sure they're fully aware of the dangers with sort of like putting your whole life in there. And I think that's my thoughts and fear. And when you switch on the news and you're seeing things about different scams and all stuff like that, you can see why people are getting caught out on them. It's because the awareness isn't there. And I think it's the $64 million question, well, how do you make people more aware? I think it's a case of we've allowed the technology to make our life too easy, and because we've allowed that technology to make our life too easy, we've almost become a slave to the technology that we have. And I think it's taking a step back is very difficult for some people because all they know is technology. They've grown up with it. So, and hence why I say sort of like I transcend those generations where I can remember if I wanted to phone someone, I'd have to use a landline. If I was out somewhere and I wanted to phone someone, I couldn't. And I think it's quite scary now with how reliant we are on technology. How some people are very reliant on technology.
Yeah, I know. I remember having a payphone charge card.
Yeah.
And having to type in, scratch it off, and type in the numbers into the phone. I think that when I first had a home computer, it was because my dad worked from home, and so his work had given him a PC. And I think I was about 8 years old, but I was the first person that I knew to have a computer in my house. And it was an alien concept to most people that I came across. But yeah, the generation of now that have not grown up without technology, I don't envy that position at all.
No, I'm glad that I grew up in the area that I grew up in, for the simple reason is we had to do. Yeah, I'm a people person because of how I grew up. If I wanted to speak to a friend, I would have to go and find that friend and then have a conversation with them face to face. And that's probably why I know that's, people say, oh, yeah, it's because you're an old git. Maybe that's the fact. But it was a case of, at times when I wanted a conversation, I had to go and find people to have those conversations with. Now it's a case of you just pick up a device and you have that chat with them. And I think there is a generational thing where sort of like, you like working from home. I prefer working in the office. Uh, and, and I think there is a divide between generations on why people are like that. And I get it. I totally get it. It's sort of like, you know, I'm me because of what I've experienced. Other people are them because of what they've experienced. I
Mm.
can't, I can talk about my experiences and my opinions, but my experiences and my opinions are no better than someone else's experience and their opinions, but they may be completely different. It's just how we perceive things.
Mm. I personally, other than a phone, I don't own any tech. Whilst there is tech in my home,
Yeah,
I don't personally own anything. So at the end of the day, I used to be terrible at this, but I am now good at just walking away, closing the door, and leaving all the tech alone. And I go and build Lego. So I have my Lego room in my house, and
yeah,
I
that,
sit and do Lego because I'm so exhausted from screens. If I want to talk to someone, I don't like to text. I want to pick up the phone and have a
yeah,
conversation with them because I just can't physically look at screens anymore. Um,
yeah,
so I sit and do my Lego in the evenings like a 10-year-old,
yeah.
I
See,
suppose.
See, I envy that because my hobby is the same as my job. Because like my hobby is data and football data, and so at the end of the day, I literally just switch off my work laptop, switch on my home laptop, and then I'm just spending 3 or 4 hours in the evening looking at data, crunching data, and doing stuff like that. And in a way, I sort of like it's like having an addiction. I've been doing it for so long now that I can't stop, and so if sort of like if I go downstairs, make a cup of coffee, and we're having a chat with my partner in the kitchen, and then she'll say, "Oh, you're doing your stuff tonight, then, aren't you?" And I just sort of, yeah, I'm going to go and do my stuff. And so it's almost like that addiction where I've got to be doing something with data. And I've challenged myself next year to sort of like do a hobby which isn't tech based because I am too tech based, and it's sort of like, probably why I suffer from headaches so much, eye strain, is because I'm spending too long in front of a bloody screen.
Yeah. Oh no, my eyesight's hugely deteriorated over the years,
Yeah,
I feel the deterioration between eye tests as well. Like I can
yeah,
see that it's going downhill, and I've recently had to turn on like the accessibility controls on my phone because my eyesight has deteriorated from
yeah,
screen work so much. So now my eyeballs have aged quite considerably. I would imagine, like me, you have multiple screens as well. So where I'm sitting now, I have 5 screens, and when I go for an eye test and they say how much screen work do you do, I just laugh because and
yeah,
then say, like, do you do other jobs? And I'm like, well, no, I turn from that screen to that screen to that screen.
yeah,
So I have to just like genuinely switch off. But I think the other side of I've never even considered that Lego's a hobby. I find I do it as a distraction, but because I think a lot of the work that I do is there's no script, there's no plan, there's no real
yeah,
playbook. So I'm using my brain all the time to come up with solutions to
yeah,
problems. Whereas if I buy a Lego set, I follow the instructions and I don't have to think
yeah,
about it.
yeah,
Whereas your hobby is thinking.
yeah. It is. It's one of those that because I run a blog, there's a couple of Twitter groups that I'm a part of. I do my tech talks. Uh, it is. It's too consuming at times. I find, but I struggle not to do it because I've been doing it for so long now. It's habitual now. It's one of those that I just do it because I do it. And hence why I said next year, uh, only because sort of like that, like give me time, almost like to wean myself off of screens. So next year I will do something which isn't based on a computer.
Mm. Well, good luck with your endeavours.
Yeah.
So my final question to you, Jamie, is if Cyber Awareness Month was a genie in a lamp and you could have one
Yeah.
wish, what would your one wish be?
It would. When I said earlier that I don't think there is enough cyber awareness, for me, it would be a case of a sort of like the awareness would. The only way we can ingrain it into what we do is by doing courses and stuff like that. But for me, it's for the awareness of cyber to be so much more than what it is now, because I find it's because we rely so heavily on tech in our day-to-day. Well, everything we do is tech-based. You go and get money out, you know, you go and use an ATM, you transfer money using your phone. Everything is based on tech, but I think the cyber awareness isn't there. So for me, it's for the cyber awareness to be upfront rather than, because I do think, you know, cyber awareness is almost like an afterthought. People do it because they have to do it. You join a company, oh, don't forget to do these courses and stuff like that. And I don't think enough is put on it. The only time it's front and center is when something goes drastically wrong, and then it's too late. If it's a bit like, you know, when people build houses, they get the foundation right so that the house built on top of it. Now, for me, the foundations is the cyber aspect of everything we do in the tech world. But rather than building on solid concrete, a lot of the time we're on sand. And so for me, it would be for people to be aware that the fact is they're using tech for everything in their life. They need to understand the foundations of what they're doing and what could go wrong before they start doing stuff. It's what I almost want people to, like, in the same way you can't drive a car unless you've got a driving license. In the same way, I want people to sort of like not use tech until they got the basics on, you know, cyber awareness. This, you know, you have to have this before we let you use a computer, because to me, it goes wrong because people don't put enough emphasis on it.
Yeah. I actually use that driving analogy all the time.
Oh, right, okay, yeah,
In fact, one of my blogs is titled, I think it's Knowledge Retention versus Situational Awareness, and I think currently cyber awareness is knowledge retention.
yeah,
Like you've started somewhere, you're gonna take a test, but actually, if you consider like the Green Cross code, you know, your mum doesn't let go of your hand until you know.
yes,
The smoke detectors in your home, like they go when you were a kid, they went off. There was a thing, you all
yeah,
congregated to see if there was a
yeah,
fire at school. You went out in the field and you got a cold with no coat on.
yeah,
And so that situational awareness is so much more important than
yes,
you have this knowledge when it's too late.
yeah, and yeah, so that would be my wish, is for that to be more, to be ingrained.
I can't argue with you on that.
Yeah,
Jamie, it's been lovely catching up with you.
it has
Thank you
been.
so much.
Thanks for inviting me, and we mustn't leave it so long next time.